A story is told in the Gospel of John about a man whom Jesus healed. We don't know the man's name. We only know that he had been blind since the day that he was born. And he lived in a time in which many considered such a condition to be a divine punishment for sin. Without accommodations, excluded from their communities, and without much of a social safety net, the blind were often left to beg for help. So when Jesus encounters this unnamed man, he sees an opportunity to teach his disciples about what God's light can bring into a dark world. He spits in the dirt, makes mud, and then rubs the mud over the man's eyes. And then he tells him to go and wash. And when he does, the man, for the first time in his life, can see. The miracle is about sight, yes, but also much more. This man can see for the first time in his life the faces of his parents, the color of the sky, the shapes of his world. But even more, he can see the goodness of a loving God. This healing means that he no longer has to beg for pocket change on the side of the road, but he can work and worship, pray and learn alongside the rest of his community. He has been restored to the life for which God made him. Except the restoration to community part didn't actually go so well. As soon as he is healed, people want to know how, why, who is responsible. Does this miracle follow protocol? The Jewish leaders interrogated the man born blind, and when with his new vision he tells them only the truth that they didn't wish to hear, they threw him out. He had lived his entire life as an outcast because of his blindness, only to find himself cast out because he has seen the Messiah. This story of the man born blind, healed by Jesus and yet expelled by the religious authorities, has an interesting parallel with the Johannine community. The people to whom the Gospel of John was originally written had also received their sight when they came to believe that Jesus was the Messiah. And they too had been expelled from their synagogues. John's Gospel is written late in the first century, after the temple in Jerusalem had been destroyed by the Romans. It was a period of upheaval and division, questioning what is right, who is trustworthy, and a terrible uncertainty in the future. Their internal battles over Jewish identity had created a deep divide. So the first recipients of this Gospel of John were, like the man born blind, Jews who were no longer welcome in their community. So I imagine that it was indeed very good news for them when they heard how Jesus intervened a second time in the life of the man born blind. When Jesus learned that the man he had healed had been expelled by his synagogue, he goes to his aid and to his defense. First, he completes the man's healing by bringing him to faith, allowing him to know what before he had only suspected. "Do you believe in the Son of Man?" Jesus asked him. "You can see now. You know my voice. I am here for you." The man responds simply, "I believe." And he worships Jesus. And then Jesus confronts the Pharisees. They think they can see. They think they know everything, and Jesus assures them they couldn't be more wrong. The 9th chapter of the Gospel of John ends in this way, but when we move into the 10th, our assigned reading for this morning, we are actually still in the midst of Jesus's confrontation with those Pharisees, those righteous elite who have tossed out this innocent believer. The identity of those thieves and bandits who come only to steal and kill and destroy should by now be clear. Jesus has no patience for those so-called religious leaders who claim to be the benevolent shepherds of the people while blocking access to God's grace. For the sake of the man born blind, for the sake of the Johannine community, and yes, even for our sake, Jesus intercedes to make a way for grace. Jesus is the Good Shepherd. He will call us by name because he knows us. He promises to lead us into the fold where we may be protected from the lies of self-interest and self-destruction. He also promises to be with us as we go out into the world. He is our Good Shepherd, and he is the gate. No one else gets to say who can be a part of Christ's community of grace. No one else gets to slam the door shut on those they wish to exclude. Christ will be the gate to welcome in all who hear his voice. The particular experience of that early Johannine community, their exclusion by the religious leaders, may not be one that we share. But I suspect that we can probably relate in a general way to what they might have been feeling. We too know what it is to live in a time of upheaval and division. We frequently have to sort through those questions of what is right and who is trustworthy. And we can understand that terrible uncertainty in the future. Jesus' promise transcends the centuries and meets us here, now. He is still our Good Shepherd. He is still our gate. Christ is here to provide us with protection from the forces of death and destruction. He is here to guide us into green pastures and to give us welcome entry into grace. He came that we may have life and have it abundantly. Jesus' promise inspires our response. And in this gospel, he also gives us a hint about what that should look like. If we claim him as our shepherd, then our response is to be sheep, familiarizing ourselves with his voice, listening for his call, trusting our lives to God's good hands, and following where he will lead us. There are still many voices in this world that threaten to lead us astray, but there is nothing about this pandemic that need prevent us from responding to God's grace with our devotion. Like those early disciples from the book of Acts, let us devote ourselves to the apostles' teaching and fellowship, to the breaking of bread and the prayers. There is green pasture there and life abundant. Amen.